Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out to this early session. I know it's not all that easy to get down to Toronto. Today we're just going to try to go through some items and aspects of a lighting project, things that you guys need to know to really help you guys make informed decisions and to be able to look at various quotes and to be able to compare them. We often see other people's quotes, and it's often hard to really identify the differences and the things that are in the quote, what the savings are, what the real costs are, things of that nature. Quick little introduction. So I'm Stefan Pacula, Managing Director of InLight LED Solutions. I've been doing lighting since about 2010, starting off back then doing GU24 CFLs. And at that point, we're getting rid of all the incandescent light bulbs. At that time, there was very little LED at all. It was some exterior, but it was compact fluorescence. After I speak, Nick Wagner, who's here, he's president of Premise LED. Nick and I have been working together pretty much since 2010. Nick's company has expanded greatly over the last 10 years. They've moved into the US and Western Canada. And then Neil Denney, also with InLight LED, he's our sales and marketing director. Neil will talk a little bit more about the softer side of the projects, the tenant employee engagement, and the benefits of promoting your project. So most reputable LED companies want our customers to be educated. We want them to know what they're looking for so they can make an informed decision. What we want to try to be is as transparent as possible, give you guys real numbers. If a customer knows what they're looking for and they can see what the real savings are, then they can make an informed decision. One example, we lost a small or a condo project. It was about a $25,000 project about a year ago. And my salesperson at the end came back to me and he talked to the property manager and had their quote. And the other company we're up against threw in a $5,000 maintenance savings. And we didn't have maintenance savings in there at all. So their payback looked much better. It was really misleading because a $5,000 maintenance savings on a $25,000 project was not realistic. So we'll go through some of the things that make up a proposal and make up the project and what you really need to look for. Redoing your lighting is one of the most cost-effective things you can do to cut your costs. Compared to HVAC or building envelope projects, it is the low-hanging fruit. And again, an educated customer, you guys will make informed decisions. You can make the decision based on your needs. All right, any project, basically you've got about 5 basic things that you're going to look at. Most people will look at the cost and the payback, but the savings is very important, and that plays hand in hand with the payback. The solutions is probably one of the most important things you should be looking at. It's one of the key things to really try to get that apples-to-apples quote, and rebates, and we'll talk about rebates in some detail. So your capital costs. Basically, any turnkey project should cover all costs. So the cost of the audit, all the parts, all the labor, including recycling, material handling, commissioning. Often for rebates, there's a site visit from one of the utility reps. Often somebody from our company or any other company should be there. So if you sign or issue a PO for a lighting project, there should be no other cost. The only other changes would be if you change the scope, and the only other caveat to that is your existing lighting, is it to code? Occasionally we'll see a building and it's an older building and they may not have proper grounds, but that's something that can be identified in the very beginning or during the audit process. Your simple payback, or your ROI, is basically your cost divided by your savings. Right? And it's generally stated in months or years. Projects with quick paybacks are often stated in months. So we'll talk about what the savings are and how that is calculated. There's various things that make up your savings, and all of these items here can influence it greatly. any of these items here can be manipulated and can change your savings. It could make it hard to compare quotes to quotes. Your counts. If we were all to go around this facility and count all the lights, nobody would get the exact same number. So you got to imagine it's always going to be plus or minus something. Sometimes we'll have people give us their numbers, and when they do that, we often will give them a per unit price. So if there's any variances at the end, plus or minus, we'll say, okay, you said there was 400 of these, well, there was 420, so we'll bill you for 20 more. If we do an audit and we've seen the entire building and we provide somebody with a quote, we guarantee we're doing that whole building for what we've quoted. So if you're having someone do an audit and they've presented to you a proposal and they missed a couple utility rooms or they missed something, that should be on them. Right? So that's something that you can have that conversation up front. You've seen our facility, you've had the chance to view it, you've seen everything. This is the price to do everything. So again, counts will never be 100%, and we know that we're likely going to be off a little bit. The next item are hours of operation. So we know that your hallways and your stairwells are on 24/7. The exterior is on an average of 12 hours a day. It's all the other rooms, your utility rooms, your offices, your lockers, shoot rooms. We often also get people will provide us with numbers, but they don't stipulate what the hours of operation are for those other areas. And if no one's going to say to me that it's only 3 hours a day and I'm up against many other quotes, I'll probably put in 24/7. So I think it's important that when you're setting off and doing your project, is that you tell the people doing the audit that our locker rooms are an average an hour a day, our boiler rooms we're probably on 8 hours a day, our offices 9 hours a day. So tell the people that are going to do your quote, do your audit, what your hours of operation are. It may seem like a small thing, but if it's a large site, it can really vary, and it can really skew your numbers and your savings. Your average hydro rate, it can vary greatly as well. I'll show you a slide on how to come up with your average hydro rate. It's going to be an average because you always have the different rates for different times of the day. But in the last, say, 2 years, I've seen rates from 9 cents to 21 cents. I'll show you what to look for on your bill so you can come up with your rate. If you have multiple sites, it's good to come up with an average. So some customers of ours will say use 14 cents as the rate for all the buildings. Other times, people won't ask for the rate, and they'll just calculate the savings based on the kilowatts savings and reductions. But again, that's an important factor because 9 cents to 21 cents is a great range. The other item is if you're calculating or you're having someone else calculate it, make sure they calculate the savings before tax. If they include sales tax on your hydro rate, then they should include sales tax on the overall cost, and therefore your payback and your savings would be taxed in on both ends. If you have your tax in on your hydro rate and not on your cost, then basically you're fudging the numbers by 13%. So again, something small to look at. Your existing proposed hydro rates, wattages. We'll talk about the differences in what you think a fixture may use and what the deemed wattages are. Most proposals, or all proposals, should show what your existing wattages are and what your new wattages are, so you can clearly see what your savings will be. Maintenance savings. It's a tangible savings. It's very hard to quantify. Most of my multi-res customers tell me to exclude it. A lot of our manufacturing customers will tell us we spent $3,000 last year on lighting. It's something to be aware of because again, some people or sometimes there will just be a number thrown out there. I'll talk a little bit about maintenance savings in a second. Occasionally you'll see air conditioning savings. Not really relevant in Canada because people can argue that the heat from a light bulb helps warm up a building in the winter. Rebates, we'll talk about rebates a lot, quite a bit. And again, sales tax. Sales tax, if it's in on your hydro rate, should be in on the overall cost. Walk you through a little bit of how energy savings is calculated. Okay, so the example here is just a 2-lamp, 4-foot T8 fixture. All right, right off the bat, 2 times 32 is 64, but actually the guide says it's 58 because there's a ballast and a ballast factor. So we're only talking about 4 or 5 watts, or 6 watts. On a 1 or 2, it's not a big deal. We recently did an office tower downtown. We did 15,000 of these items, and 15,000, if it was overstated, at 12 hours a day would be about $60,000 in overstated savings. So there is a guide, and I'll get to that in a second. So if you look at this chart here, so you've got a 58 watt fixture. The total kilowatts is basically the wattage divided by 1,000. And the annual kilowatts is then the hours of operation times the total kilowatts. So then our new equipment, dropping the wattage down to 24, and you can see that our annual kilowatts is dropped down to 210. I have a little note here saying T8 LED tubes varies greatly depending on the existing ballast, and they do. You can take we've tested many fixtures. There's so many different ballasts out there, and T8 LED tubes react differently. It's really hard to nail down what it is. Most companies, including us, will just say 24, because it could be 20, it could be 28. It's going to vary. We'll talk a little bit later about different solutions. Okay, so your energy savings. Basically, your kilowatt reduction is your total kilowatts minus your future state. So you have a reduction of 34. Your total kilowatt reduction is 297. So your annual energy savings is your total kilowatt reduction times your average hydro rate. All right, so in this current example, in a year, based on running 24/7, you'd save $48. And the payback also takes into consideration the cost of the part and the rebate. So that is basically the savings. So you should see this on a proposal or a quote. If it's not visible to you, ask to see these numbers, because everybody will have these numbers because they need it to come up with their solutions. Okay, as I said, the 2 lamp fixture doesn't equal 64 watts, it's 58. There's a website and a company called Excel Energy. They're out of the US. Most companies, including utilities, use this guide to dictate what the wattages are. The same thing could be said for a 400 watt exterior metal halide, uses 460 watts. So there's what they call wattage, and there's dean wattages. So it can be misleading, and people can use these numbers to make proposals look better. So that website lists out all the different T8s, T5s, T12s, metal halides, incandescents. It's a really good tool to make sure you're getting the true numbers. And again, so proposals should clearly indicate what these wattages were. Talked about the hours of operation already. It's like I said, it's a good idea to say to the companies, my utility rooms are on 3 hours a day or X amount of hours a week or per year. Tell them what the hours are. That way you'll be clear, and if you're getting multiple quotes, everybody will have the same hours, the same hydro rates. Okay, so your average hydro rate, you take your total electrical charges and divide it by the adjusted kilowatts before tax. So we have an example here. This is from an apartment building in Toronto. The one thing that came up, I guess, last year, there is a provincial rebate. So what we did here, we took the total charge minus the rebate and divided it by, and down here is your adjusted kilowatts used. So this building was low. This was under 10 cents, 9 cents a kilowatt. This was a warehouse in Milton, and their rate was 21 cents. So you can see there's a big variance. I'd say the averages these days for apartments are probably in the 12, 13 range, but it does depend. A lot has to do where you are, if there's a power station near you. There's a lot of different things involved, and then if you've looked at your bill, there's different debt repayments and other charges as well. Often, half of your bill isn't what you use, it's other charges. So either figure it out yourself by taking your total kilowatts divided by, or your charge divided by the kilowatts you used before tax. If you have trouble with that, if you provide it to the people doing your proposal or your audit, they can figure it out and tell you. Or you tell them, do an average of 13, 14 cents. Okay, when you figure out what your average hydro rate is, dictate it to the people doing your proposal, or ask to see it on the proposal. Okay, maintenance savings. Very real and tangible, both in labor and parts. Most audit and proposal software will generate a maintenance savings number, but the problem is, what is the cost of the parts? What's the cost of your labor? Often multi-res people will have people on site, they're getting paid anyways to be there. The bigger problem is that it takes an average, and it's really hard to really quantify what cycle is your building in with a lighting system. If it was a brand new building that's 5 years old, you know. But generally, most of these buildings are 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, and it's a mix. So it's a number it's real, but it's hard to nail down and get it right. So, as I said earlier, most of our multi-res folks say exclude it. They'll come up with their own number. Other people will tell us that what they spent the previous year. So it's something to be aware of. If it's in there and you've got quotes from multiple people, look for that number and ask if it's included. Air conditioning savings, I've seen those on a few proposals. Definitely relevant in southern US where the air conditioning is going all year around. But like I said, you could argue that lamps heat up the building in the wintertime. So that's something I'd probably not want to see in a proposal. Okay, so we'll switch over to something else now. So what are your needs? Generally, it's going to be all of these items. Saving money is definitely one of the driving forces, but you can also improve your light levels. You can tackle any security issues. You also have an opportunity to update your look. If you've got old fixtures, missing lenses, or mismatched fixtures, it's an opportunity to upgrade and change that. You can also now have the opportunity to use sensors, controls, dimmers. It also can go a long way for tenant or employee engagement. You're showing your tenants that you're trying to improve the efficiency of the building, be a better corporate neighbor, reduce your carbon footprint. Quick little thing on color temperature. Majority of businesses, apartments uses 4K, 4,000 Kelvin. 3,000 K is great for your home. When we do in-suite work, it's often 3,000 K. And 5,000 K, you'll see an exterior. Hospitals, factories, it's bluer, brighter, it keeps people awake. For the majority, probably for all of our work that we do, it's 4,000 K. But again, it's personal preference. That's what I generally tell people. Again, it's your choice. Most fixtures and lamps are available in most of those colors. 5,000 K is kind of getting pushed off to the side. People are generally going more with warmer colors. Okay, so part of your project, once you've figured out the cost and the savings aspect, is determining what your needs are. There's really two different approaches: short-term, long-term. Short-term being you got a short-term lease, you're planning on moving, or you have a small budget. Long-term solutions, owners of buildings, long-term lease, or you want the best long-term value with the most financial and environmental benefits. We do both. Depends on, it's what the customer wants. So short-term, basically you're relamping an existing fixture. You're going to get similar light output. Existing fixtures with the lenses are old school. They're not designed to maximize the light output. So we find generally if we're relamping with T8 or A19 light bulbs, you're getting about the same light output. If you want it brighter, with a lamp, then your savings compared to a CFL or any other fluorescent is very small. In the case of T8s, T12s, T5s, you're still dependent on the existing ballast. So if your ballast are old, your ballast will probably fail before the tubes fail. If you're going to change your ballast at this time, you can almost argue that you might as well go to a new fixture. The price points become very close. Relamping, short-term solutions, you got a 25 to 50,000 hour lifespan, you know, a 3 to 6 year solution based on 24/7. Usually not compatible with controls or dimmers, but it is the most cost effective with the shortest payback. You know, relamping projects for us are generally 8 months paybacks. And they're very simple installations. It's plug and play. So you can, it's very, very little disruption to your building, your workplace, your office. So again, this is really, you guys got to determine what your needs are. If your fixtures are in good shape, your lenses are in good shape, relamping is a good option. You might want to consider changing your ballast at the same time. Long term, you can definitely improve your light levels. Lenses and all new LED fixtures are designed to get the light on the floor. LEDs are directional light, whereas old light bulbs, light shines 360 degrees. It depends on some reflectors to get the light on the floor. LED points to the floor or to wherever it's shining, and the lenses are designed to maximize that light to get to where it's needed. So you can often drop the wattages down greatly and double your light output. So new fixtures have a new lens. You can also have an opportunity for a new style. So if you've got really old fixtures from the 60s, it's probably a good idea to change them. Over time, old fixtures, lenses tend to yellow and block a lot of the light. We see often with buildings that will have different styles, different color temperatures. So it's a chance, if you're going to make this investment, to upgrade your look, new fixtures, a new style, modernize your building. These new fixtures have an integral driver. So whereas fluorescents had a ballast, all LEDs have a driver. And unlike a ballast, the drivers should last 10 to 20 years. It's a 50 to 100,000 hour solution, so it's a 10-year plus solution. If you put controls on it, a lot of fixtures will have integral motion sensors, or you can add a sensor, or you can have scout sensors. And if you have this fixture running, say 80 or 70% of the time only on at 10 or 20%, you're now talking about a 20-plus year solution. So a fixture, a new LED fixture, quality LED fixture with controls will last a very long time. It's definitely the best long-term value, and it is 100% maintenance free. So you will have no other cost, labor, maintenance fees with a new fixture. You can throw, there's no mercury, there's nothing in an LED chip that is harmful to the environment. So I believe they're just, you throw them in the garbage.
So you pretty much throw it in your recycling bin and have your...
You could throw it in the garbage, and most fixtures these days, the array of LEDs is basically a couple screws that can be taken down, and a new one can be put back up. So yes, and you can't throw it away. Okay, let me get one. Talk a little bit about rebates. Great program. I can tell you that in April it's going to change, and apparently it's going to change quite a bit. From what I've been told, some of the rebates for A19s and probably T8 tubes are going to probably be reduced greatly or eliminated. And that's basically due to the cost of T8s and A19s have come down so much. I think in some cases the rebates are more than what the cost of the parts are these days. So one thing about the rebates in the program, it's always at risk until you get it submitted and approved. But the rebates can influence what the best solution is. And a quick example here, flat panels were getting a $50 rebate, but a surface mount fixture that was basically doing the same thing didn't. And it didn't make sense in the overall value to offer that other option. They changed it and added that a surface mount linear fixture would get a $50 rebate. So that now made that option much more appealing. So it's important that you or the people you're dealing with look at the rebates, and it'll help you decide on what the best solution is. Sometimes you might be thinking, I can't afford that fixture, or it's not going to make the best business case, but look at the different options with rebates. There's a prescriptive track, there's also a custom track. We look at both to maximize the money we can get for our customer. That's just an example where they added the linear ambient fixture, and depending on the size and the wattage, there's various things. So again, we are expecting this program to change next week, basically. Okay, so a quick summary of what basically I talked about. So your savings calculation, your counts, you can do your own and ask for a per cost solution for each line item, or have the contractor do it and then guarantee that the site was audited, counted, and will be completed for the agreed cost. Hours of operation, dictate what you want those to be. Hydro rate, again, dictate what you want that to be. Ask to see the existing and proposed wattages. Maintenance savings, either have it excluded or have it included, but be aware of it and be aware what that number is. And then again, with the rebates, projects can't proceed until they are approved. So if someone says that you're going to get X amount of dollars for a rebate, that application has to be approved before the project moves forward. So just make sure that that rebate is very close to what was promised to you. Okay. I think there will be time for questions at the end. That's it for me, and Nick will be up next.
As Stefan said, I am Nick Wagner. I'm the president and co-founder of Premise LED. Just a quick show of hands here, just so I know what I'm dealing with. How many of you have been involved with lighting for more than 5 years? All right. How many have already done a lighting retrofit in one of your properties? All right, we got some veterans in here. 12 years ago, my partner and I were working in the lighting industry, and we saw that this industry was about to change significantly. And today I want to talk a little bit more sort of philosophically about how lighting gets to market a little bit different now and some of those changes that we're all sort of dealing with in the industry. So let's go back to the good old days for a little bit. Back in the good old days, we had brands that we'd known since we were kids, right? Well-established brands, and they offered massive assortments of traditional products, right? All the same things. Incandescent, HID, fluorescent, and they sold these products to traditional lighting distributors. And that's where you went to get product, right? And often, those guys sold it to your local electrician. And then that electrician then sold it, and typically installed it, for the super that was in your building who was responsible for that day-to-day lighting maintenance. But we've gone through decades of the same process, right? The same way of product getting to market. But then something happened. The LED, the light emitting diode, okay? And it absolutely turned the industry upside down, okay? Now, the thing about the LED was, LEDs have been around for a very long time, right? We've all seen the little red dot on our TV, right? Wonder what the heck was in there making that thing happen. Something happened in the early 90s, which was the invention of the blue LED. And that's where things got interesting, because in much the same way that we have phosphors in fluorescent tubes, we could use phosphors to control blue light and create all the shades of white that we were used to, okay? That's where it got very interesting. Now, that was back in the 90s, and that was through a company called Nichia. And it took 20 plus years to get from that discovery to where we have basically LED solutions for every kind of fixture, right? There's really nothing we can't do with an LED now. You know, everything from the reducing of energy, but giving you light fixtures in different shapes and sizes, and also giving you access to controls, okay, that we couldn't do with other technologies. But let's go back to the guys that were running the industry back in the day, right? What happened to them? Well, change isn't easy, right? First of all the sales guys from the manufacturers and all those lighting distributors hated this development, right? They loved when your lamps and ballasts burned out. That was great business, right? The contractors weren't too thrilled about it either, right? There have been numerous times in the early part of my career where I honestly thought I should just buy a bucket truck because you guys pay through the nose for that thing, right? Every time you got 3 or 4 lights out and that one tenant is, if I get mugged, I'm suing you, right? And so you go get a bucket truck, $300-400 the second they cross the curb, right? They know you have no choice. Good money, right? But who did love this change? Business owners, right? The guys who were in charge of the bottom line, because they could see what the real benefit was, right? I think the real issue here is that the LED market moved so quick. It was moving at 100 miles an hour. It waited for no one. The old companies couldn't keep up. And it really created a whole new value proposition in lighting, okay? So, companies that specialized in delivering tailored LED solutions were the new way, okay? Companies like mine, okay, were able to source LED fixtures from the exact same factories, guys, the exact same factories as the big brands. But we could bring them to market faster and cheaper, okay? Companies like Stefan and Neil's, well, they were able to really specialize just in LED retrofits, okay? And they became the experts in the product and how to apply them in specific environments, whether it's an apartment building or whether it's a factory, okay? The key thing here is that you, the clients, needed more than what a typical distributor had been delivering you for all these decades, right? What did you need? You need services, right? These are big projects, right? You needed someone who could audit that building for you. I mean, your supers weren't going to do it. And if you're running a large portfolio, you're not going to run around and do it, right? You needed the analysis. You needed someone that could dig into the numbers and give you that base math, right? So you could at least understand whether it might be a good idea. Lighting design, right? You've got code issues. You've got safety issues. Someone had to be able to show you that if you change all your lights, you will still get all the light that you need, right? And finally, the rebate process. If you've got a portfolio of 20, 50, 100 buildings, trust me, you don't want to be doing the rebates unless you're hiring, okay? So this whole value proposition changed how every light bulb goes to market now in industry, okay? So let's look back again on those good old days, the old brands, the traditional distributors. What happened to them when all this took place? Well, a lot of them got stuck in very old business models, right? In very slow, sell the same thing over and over, no education because you already know what you need, right? Because it's the same bloody light bulb you've bought for 40 years, haven't changed the fixture. There's really no big discussion about what you want to buy, okay? And as a result, it was difficult for them to accelerate, okay? Especially because these were all guys that were selling so many other things. So the way I look at it is very simple. When you look at this, you probably see a picture of just many different types of groceries, okay? Tons of different products available. If you know what you want, you can walk up and you can grab it, okay? But when I think of the traditional lighting industry, the big brands and the big distributors, what I think about when I look at this is high pressure sodium, mercury vapor, fluorescent, incandescent. I think about pipe, cable, wire, tools, distribution, zip ties, the thousands of products they all have to sell every day, okay? The truth is, most of those traditional paths to market, they were all jack of all trades, master of none, okay? And LED, to be honest with you, is just too complicated for that. You have to have someone that truly understands what they're doing so that they don't do something bad to you in the process of your rebate. So, I've been doing this a long time. I've been in the LED business for 12 years, back from the very early days of the very first light bulbs. I remember selling par 38 lamps for $120. Those are my good old days back then. But what is the number one obstacle, okay? For virtually everyone sitting in this room, and I speak to groups that are in manufacturing, I speak to groups that are in hospitality, the number one obstacle for you having a successful lighting retrofit is very simple. It's fear, okay? Again, I've spoken to thousands of people. This is, without a doubt, the answer, okay? It's fear that you're going to pick the wrong partner, right? You're going to start this process. You're going to meet 5 different companies, 4 of which you've never heard of. The one you do, you don't like already, right? What do you do, okay? It's fear that you're going to make a long-term investment in the wrong products, right? Because you just don't know. It's brands you don't recognize. It's fear that you're not going to get the right lighting result, right? That an inspector is going to come into your building a month after your retrofit and you're going to get fined because it's not bright enough. And how can that be? You just spent all this money. So it is a fear that you won't meet code, right? There's this fear that you're going to pay too much, right? That you're not going to get the best rebate, that you're going to leave money on the table because you got one shot to do this, okay? I think really the ultimate fear is that you're all going to get left holding the bag for what might be the biggest investment your client makes that year, right? That's the real fear that I see out there. So let's talk about how to win, okay? How to not screw it up. So first of all, pick a partner that's done it before, right? I can't stress this enough. If you're retrofitting an apartment building, find someone who has retrofitted many other apartment buildings, okay? Talk to the people they worked with. Go to the apartments, okay? You don't want to be the guy that someone else learns how to retrofit an apartment building with, right? That's not going to be a good situation for you. Another one, please, don't chase shiny objects, okay? I've been doing this a long time. I can bring a wonderful parking lot light into your office, plug it in 4 feet away from you, shine it directly in your eyes and go, isn't that bright? That's awesome, right? It doesn't mean anything, right? There's a lot of that kind of snake oil approach out there, right? And also, don't be fooled by the comfort of familiar brands, okay? This is one that I think people screw up on all the time. Virtually all of the major lighting companies, the global brands you recognize, they have all sold off their lighting divisions. They have all divested, okay? Philips, Leadvance, Eaton, Creed just sold last week. Creed just dumped their light fixture company, okay? Ask yourself why, okay? So don't be fooled by the brand, okay? Sylvania, which is now Leadvance, is now owned by a Chinese chip manufacturer. So if you think Sylvania means you're getting North American quality, you have a misunderstanding going on in your head that you need to deal with, okay? If it sounds too good to be true, I'm not even going to finish that. If I have to explain that part to you, you're probably already in trouble on any of the projects you're working on, okay? You have to come to terms with that. And the last one is, and this is probably the biggest thing that I find. Again, I travel all of North America. I have sat in thousands of customer presentations, okay? And this is the absolute truth. The people that are almost always consistently disappointed with the result of their retrofit are the people that went with the lowest quote, okay? Now, I understand everybody's got budgets, and if you're representing a portfolio where they're squeezing you all the time, lower, 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 okay? But if you want to dramatically increase your odds of failure, please choose the cheapest price from the guy you've never heard of who's never done an apartment building. And best of luck to you, okay? The problem we have out there in the industry is people like yourselves often don't have time to dig in, right? If you're about to spend $100 grand, you need to dig in. You need to find out why it's cheaper, okay? There's lots of gamesmanship. Stefan was very polite about it because he competes in that space. I don't have a filter anymore after being in this industry, so I don't care, I'll say it. There's a lot of crooks out there, okay? There are a lot of guys that have been in the lighting industry for about a cup of coffee, okay? We like to call them trunk slammers. The fact of the matter is, you may get inferior product if you don't dig in and see what's really happening. Do a test of a hallway, right? You may find out that the price is much higher in the end because they went in low, and one of the favorite things is change orders, right? I quoted you 80 grand, the other guy quoted 100. I'm ending at 110 whether you like it or not. You just don't know it yet. There's lots of that out there in the marketplace, okay? So let me leave you with a couple final thoughts, okay, about how to get through this process. Number one, if you haven't retrofitted every non-LED light source in your portfolio, you are behind and you are losing money, okay? It's as simple as that. It's an absolute fact. and rebates are fading away. Now, Stefan's talking about near-term changes and this item going down and that item going down. It's more serious than that, guys, okay? The rebates are fading away. We all heard the announcement this week from the Ontario government just abruptly axing a bunch of programs, okay? This program is continuing for now, but please understand, we're going to go from being paid to change to being forced to change so fast you won't see it coming, okay? It's already being talked about. I work with conservation demand managers across the country, okay? It's going to go from carrot to stick in the blink of an eye, all right? Especially with the Ontario government we have right now, okay? Why would I pay you to do something that we all agree is good and that we all agree pays? This government's going to say, forget that. I'm just going to pass a law. We've already started it, guys. The banning of the incandescent light bulb, right? That's the start. That's the thing this government needs to just, it's not a new law, they're just going to extend it. And they're going to say, great. Effective in 6 months, every hallway fixture has to be on a control. You have lights that are in an unoccupied area 80% of the time. I'm just going to pass a law. So the cost of your retrofit is going to go through the roof, right? Through the roof. Now, please don't be offended by the way I speak. I'm very blunt, okay? So please take no offense when I say this. It's not a debate anymore. Whatever reason you have in your internal meetings for why you can't do a rebate right now, you're wrong. Guys, you may not know it yet, but I'm telling you with the utmost respect, you are wrong. The math works every time. Stefan just talked about payback periods, 8-month payback periods. And there are still people who say no to an 8-month payback period. That's too expensive. It's not even a CapEx thing, guys. It's OpEx. It's money you're already spending, right? So please know, okay? There's virtually no reason not to pursue retrofits. You may be afraid of it, find the right partner. And so the final thought I'll leave you with here today is, guys, start the process, okay? At least start the discussion, because there's, again, virtually no reason why you shouldn't do it, and there's a ton of reasons why you're going to do it anyway at much higher prices, okay? The reality is coming our way. Okay, that's mine. I'm going to hand it over to Neil.
So now that Nick has convinced you all to retrofit your buildings to LED, thank you, Nick. I'm here to speak to you about how to engage people who live and work in your buildings, the buildings that you manage, what considerations, what communications, what planning can be done upfront with your tenants to gain their buy-in, and which will help achieve hassle-free, on-time, and on-budget projects. In both the multi-residential and commercial industries, the goal is to have happy tenants. I hope the following information will help achieve that goal. So preparing for change. Congratulations, you've made the decision to move ahead with an LED retrofit. But have you considered how this retrofit will affect the building's tenants? What your tenant communication strategy might be about that retrofit? How tenants will react to the changes to their living space, or in the commercial industry, their workspace? What can we do to avoid tenant conflict up front? If you haven't considered the foregoing, your project may not go as well as expected. It will lead to complaints, change orders, and tenant dissatisfaction. There's 3 parties involved in a LED retrofit, not 2. Retrofits are largely driven by 2 parties, the building owner or property manager and the contractor. But what about the tenant? Owners benefit from reduced hydro costs and increased property values. Contractor benefits from increased profits, hopefully, if we price it right. Often the tenant benefit and engagement is overlooked. So, you're changing our lighting. It's human nature. People are resistant to change, especially resistant to change if they're not informed and do not understand the benefit to themselves. If you don't take some sort of action up front, these things can happen. Why wasn't I consulted about this new lighting? The contractor arrived. I wasn't aware he was coming. What's going on? These LED lights are much brighter than the old lights. I need changes. This project is negatively affecting my workflow in a commercial standpoint. How long is this project going to take? How does this benefit me? These are common things we hear if proper steps aren't taken up front to make sure that your tenants aren't made aware of what's happening in the building. So do your homework in advance. In your due diligence, prior to the completion of your lighting audit, take into consideration light levels throughout your buildings. It's really, really important. Make sure you're installing the correct light levels and colors. In office settings, employees are the company's greatest asset. So if you're in the commercial industry, a lot of different businesses within the building that you're managing, they're going to be concerned. They're going to want to know what's going into their buildings. People spend 8 to 10, 12 hours a day in these offices. They want to make sure that their employees are going to be satisfied with what you're installing in their areas. If you do consult them up front and you include them a little bit more in the commercial setting, they may be willing to pay for extras up front rather than looking at the end of the project. When I talk about changes, when I talk about things like dimmers, when I talk about things like sensors, if you approach in a commercial setting, if you approach the customer up front, your tenant up front, and say, hey, we're doing a lighting retrofit. Would you be interested in, this is our base scope that we're going to pay for. However, you might have some options up front. Get that on the table up front. They might be willing to pay for those extras. If you don't, and then you come back in after the product is installed, you might get complaints about levels of brightness. You might get, why can't we control this light? I need to reduce that light. That leads to change orders coming back, and a lot of times they won't pay for it. Other things to take in consideration when you're planning for your install. Employee workflow and tenant accessibility. So in a multi-residential setting, we want to make sure that when our installation crews are there, they're there during the days when they're not affecting the lives of the people in the building. So let's make sure the guys aren't getting there at 7 o'clock in the morning. They're getting there after 9. They're working till 4, 5 o'clock, so people aren't really affected by that. In a commercial setting, office setting, we do most of our work at night. So we're bringing crews in after 6 o'clock, 6:30, prepping the areas, and then working through the night. So let's make sure that we make sure that, people, the tenants in the buildings are made aware of that it's not going to affect their everyday lives. So employee light levels, I touched on a little bit there. In individual offices, do the work up front. If you can install dimmers and add value to a space, then let's do it up front. Let's get it in the capital cost up front. Common areas. Let's make sure that we're not just meeting code in multi-residential settings. Let's make sure that they're actually safe areas, brightly lit and welcoming areas throughout the buildings. Open and shared office areas. This is a tricky one if you are in the commercial sector, because we've done a lot of large projects where you may have hundreds of people working in the same area. They share the space. Some people are less tolerant to light. So you have to make sure that when you're going in and looking at the building in advance, you might see a lot of lights are actually turned off. Okay? So we want to make sure that when we do the retrofit and retrofit the new lamp, fixture in there, that the installer knows that let's go ahead and retrofit it, but when we're doing it, we're going to depower that lamp again, the fixture again. And there's a number of different ways you can do this. And it's very important because you learn by experience, but you get a lot of complaints if all of a sudden that light over someone's workspace is all of a sudden on and beaming down on them the next day. And you're going to have to send someone back again and depower it, and it costs money. Exterior and garage lighting levels, they must be code, but again, think about your tenants here. No one wants to go into a dark garage late at night. You can replace one for one, but let's increase the light levels in those certain areas. Let's take advantage of the fact that we're doing this retrofit, and we're improving the area of the building. This might seem really simple, but let's give lots of notice to folks that a new project is actually coming down the pipe. And we do this a number of different ways. We work with our customers, property managers or building owners, by sending, and I'll show it to you in a second, sending posters out that are on PDF files that they can email to all stakeholders throughout the building to know that there's new exciting project, improvement, enhancement to the building that's coming along the way. Sometimes we do a kickoff town hall meeting in commercial buildings where we'll get a tenant representative from each company to come in. They can ask us questions about what's happening in the building, how it's going to affect them. It gives them a sense of they're really, really a part of this project as well. Explain to them, obviously, all the benefits. Once you get closer to that start date, once you know when you're actually going to start the project, you really need to make sure that folks know exact dates, when they're going to kind of be on those floors, when there's going to be work taking place. If it's an office situation, alert everybody when the workers are going to be there installing. They can clear off their desks. You don't want anybody's pictures of the kids falling on the floor and crashing. It leads to complaints. It comes back to the property manager, and it comes back to us. It also it just gives people a sense and knowledge that they actually know someone's working above their station at that time. Don't surprise anybody. That's a key. So this is a sample of an InLight customer project poster that we get and we send out to some of our customers. This is the one we send out weeks in advance. It can be sent to all the stakeholders in the building electronically, and we also a lot of the times make up bigger posters that they can post in their lobbies or in common areas. It's really emphasizing the fact that this is a great project for the building. We're switching over to modern technology, and it's a great, great thing for the environment. Often we get questions from tenants, why is this happening? So, there's a lot of reasons why it's happening. Obviously, from an economic standpoint, it's great for the building owners and stakeholders there. But this new system's going to be more efficient. You can tell your tenants it's going to be more efficient. It's offsetting increased hydro rates. Everybody in Ontario can relate to increased hydro rates. It's going to reduce the amount of maintenance in the building, for sure. You're not going to have to worry about lights going off in your stairwells, lights going off in your hallways, because LEDs last longer. They're more dependable. It's going to improve light levels. It's going to be a better living and working environment for everybody involved. It's going to modernize your either home, apartment, or your workspace. There's a lot of older apartments across Toronto and Ontario that have the 1950s and 60s fixtures. We need to replace those. It gives people a sense of pride that they're living in a building that's being invested in. LEDs are more environmentally friendly. Obviously, everybody buys into that common benefit. So in a multi-residential setting, the big benefits that you can relay to your tenants, there's increased light levels, common areas, hallways, exteriors, talked about that. No one wants to be scared when they're walking in the path behind their building. Let's light up the back of the path there with directional lighting that LED provides, and make sure they feel safe where they live and work. Again, I talked about the durability of the lights, the aesthetics, and the tenant experience. The reduction in hydro costs may lead to more building investment. Obviously, building owners in the multi-residential sector are very challenged with rent increases and the ability to make more money. So they're looking for cost savings anywhere they can. They can get great cost savings through LED retrofits, and perhaps that puts a little bit more money in their pocket to do other capital projects throughout the building. So in a commercial setting, office setting, more natural light with LED. A lot of studies have been done showing it reduces eye squint, then reduces headaches, it reduces absenteeism, okay? The ability to add lighting controls is something customers and tenants love in an office setting. The ability to turn up and down their lights is a great thing for them to have. So again, talk about that up front. It's greener and more environmentally friendly. It shows that your company is actually has a green thought process. Less maintenance again. Increased lighting to again like multi-res in your garages and your exteriors of your building, and the company's saving money. And if you're working for a company, you hope your company's profitable. You hope the bottom line's doing well, and that's good for everyone. So the common one that I always like to go to is obviously this is a no-brainer right now for the environment. The fact that we're using 50 or to 70% less energy when we're using LED fixtures and lamps is a great thing for the environment. We need to get away from the 100-year-old, 150-year-old technology of old metal halide, and fluorescent lighting contains mercury, argon gas. You have to pay to get those things taken away and get them recycled. So let's emphasize to our tenants that we're doing a great thing for the environment and really drive that home. This is a website that we use quite often as a great resource. You saw the poster that we had up there before. And this is where we get a lot of the information. So if you want to do something similar, go to the EPA website. And you simply put in into the calculator here, your number up top is your kilowatts saved per annum. So you put that in, and it basically will start pumping out great equivalents to the amount of CO2 emissions that may be saved and whatnot. You can see over there the metric tons of CO2 emissions saved by switching over. So it's a great thing. It's a great resource. I highly recommend you go and use that. It really starts to drive home what the impact of your retrofit would be. So in conclusion, people are resistant to change. But the more you can do to educate your tenants on the project that's upcoming and the benefits of it to not just the building owner, but them, the more upfront, the more successful the project's going to be. Accentuate the positives of the retrofit. Really get pumped up about it. This is a great enhancement. It's a great thing for your building. It's a great thing for the office spaces. At the very least, I would say you really need to let people know and give people notice as to what's happening. You can go as far with tenant engagement as you want. You can have the town halls. You can get their input up front. Not everybody does that. It's not necessary for everybody, but at least let people know that there's a great new project coming into their building. I can't stress this enough. If you do get the tenant buy-in up front, it's going to lead to a more efficient and painless install. Less change orders. Nick talked about change orders. The more we can talk to our tenants, especially in a commercial setting, about what's going into their building, if we don't tell them what's going into their building, they have every right to come back to you in their office space, every right to come back to you and say, I don't like that. Why did you put that? Why did you put that in there? I want to make some changes. You want to avoid that up front at all costs, guys. It's something that we see quite a bit. There's tenants that don't care, you know, they're not fussy, but there's a lot of tenants in there it'll be office after office after office. And you do one dimmer for one person, you're going to do dimmers for everybody. And they're not cheap to do. They're not overly expensive. Put them in the capital cost up front. So thank you very much for your time. And I think we have a few more minutes for some questions.